This recording was produced by Oregon Trail Baptist Church. If you'd like to get more recordings, or to leave your feedback, please visit us at www.otbchurch.com or write us at P.O. Box 298, Guernsey, Wyoming 82214. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope that today's recording will not just challenge your thinking, but will transform your life.
Judges chapter 2 this morning in your Bibles, if you would. Judges chapter 2. Judges chapter 2. We're only going to cover the first 5 verses here this morning. I think sometimes when I plow through a whole chapter, I miss a point that just needs kind of driven home for our hearts, not just our heads. And so Judges chapter 2 this morning, starting with verse 1, and we'll read to verse 5. And the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you unto the land which I swear unto your fathers, and said, I will never break my covenant with you. And ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. And it came to pass, when the angel of the Lord spake these words unto all the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept. And they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there unto the Lord. Lord, we thank you for this text of Scripture. And this morning, as we dive into it and seek to take the truth presented here in this short passage and apply it to our hearts and lives today, I ask that you would stir our hearts to faith. Would we see you as the God who's in control and the God who can be trusted? And would we live and make choices and decisions in our life that reflect that faith? We ask this in your Son's name. Amen. So by way of introduction, just a reminder, bringing you in, the book of Joshua, you have the conquest of the land. Judges and Ruth are this period of time where they're referred to as the Judges, and that's the book we're covering now. They lead into 1st and 2nd Samuel, which is the story of leading up into really King David, but King Saul's there when the children of Israel want a king and ask for a king prematurely. They get Saul, then David. And then we have on into 1st and 2nd Kings, the story of the monarchy. I could add in here 1st and 2nd Chronicles as well. I guess there's no really good reason to leave that out. That just centers on the monarchy of Judah. But Judges fits as kind of a connection book between the book of Joshua, where the conquest has taken place, and really the time of the kings. We divided the book up into 3 sections. There's, first of all, what we're dealing with here in this chapter, a failure to drive out the Canaanites. In the last couple weeks, that's what we've looked at is, in chapter 1, the time and time again, there was excuses, all sorts of excuses, from whether it was chariots or this difficulty or that difficulty. They failed to drive out the Canaanites, and thus they would live with those consequences. So, chapters 3 to 16, the main portion of the book is dealing with these judges and their corruption and this cycle of sin and oppression. Then the people repent, they get deliverance from God, but then once again they have a time of peace, but in that time of peace they fall back into idolatry once again. And the last is a couple stories in the book where they are dark and disturbing, and it shows how the judges were not just the corrupt ones. The people themselves were incredibly corrupt, and their behavior was repulsive. We're now looking at Judges 2, verses 1 to 5. And here we have the angel of the Lord confronting God's people. So in chapter 1, we had this long list of the different tribes and the areas that they were supposed to conquer and their failures to do so. And it started off with Judah as doing really well for the most part, but then this one area of failure, and then tribe after tribe after tribe failed to do what God called them to do. And then they're confronted by the angel of the Lord. Begins here with, and an angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim. And we're just going to stop here, and who is this angel of the Lord? My understanding of the angel here is this is a theophany, or this is Christ before he was incarnate, showing up and appearing with a message for his people. There are some scholars who don't think this is actually a theophany here. And the reason for that, the term angel simply means messenger. So it could be, in their thinking, it could be a prophet who is delivering God's message. I'm not convinced of that because he speaks in the first person, whereas most prophets speak in the thus saith the Lord, they're speaking of the Lord in the third person. Also here, I think there's a connection to be made with the story so far. Think way back to Exodus. We had in Exodus 23, behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Okay, so all the way back, God's revealing to Moses, he's sending this angel to take them into the place he's prepared. Verse 21, he says, beware of him, obey his voice, provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. So this angel that was sent before them, something's unique. He has the ability to pardon transgressions because the name of God is in him. God alone is the one who can pardon sin. So that's part of why we connect this angel to Christ himself, as part of God showing up. This would be the same angel that earlier in the book, in Exodus 3, appears to the Lord in the burning bush. And we covered that in Sunday school, where it says the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in the flame of the fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was on fire, and the bush was not consumed. And you're like, okay, the angel of the Lord appeared. And then later, like 2 verses later, it refers to the angel as God. So it helps us connect the dots. God is recognized, or here in the book of Judges, we're recognizing that this angel, God is coming with a message to his people about their sin. And again, some don't think this is the angel of the Lord like Christ in person. I do. It doesn't really destroy either way to look at this passage. As I was thinking and reading on this week, the next thing that I looked at came up from Gilgal to Bochim. And as I was reading this and I was stopping to think about it, my first question I asked was, why on earth do I care? Why do I care that he came up from Gilgal to Bochim? And the way I said that sounds maybe a bit sarcastic, and I don't mean that. But that type of question is important. Because as I'm reading this story, all that matters is the angel shows up with a message, right? Sort of. But the author has given us this piece of information for a reason. So Gilgal, the map may be harder to see now that everybody's further away. But Gilgal is kind of just north of the Dead Sea. It's not too far from Jericho. And what was it that happened already at Gilgal? Well, that's where when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, they set up camp at Gilgal. They crossed the Jordan, set up camp, and before they conquered Jericho. And so you kind of have to let these places and the stories that get associated with these places sink into your mind as you read these stories, because the biblical writer will drop in place names, and you're supposed to kind of think through some of the backstory and history. I have Bethel circled. That's where most people think Bochim is. They think it's just a synonym for Bethel and a different name, and that is why the name Bochim is used instead of Bethel. I don't know, and I couldn't find a good answer there. So I'm going to leave that as mystery. That's a good example. Sometimes you don't have answers. Sometimes you find something that makes sense. But what happened at Gilgal? I want to read a quote from a Old Testament survey book. Why does the text speak of going up from Gilgal? The angel did not physically follow a road from one site to the other. The text only means to say that the same divine personage who issued the initial battle plan at Gilgal, i.e. the battle that was for Jericho, now appeared at Bochim. At Gilgal, the reproach of God's people had been rolled away. There, the covenant feast and the covenant signs had been renewed after 38 years of suspension. At Gilgal, Israel learned the power of obedient faith. At Bochim, the dismay of disobedience. Thus the phrase, from Gilgal to Bochim, expresses the decline of Israel from spiritually lofty heights to the pit of spiritual despair. Now let me unpack a little bit of that quote. So under Joshua, first part of the book of Joshua, they cross the Jordan River to enter into the Promised Land. They had just spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness, allowing the generation to die off who refused to enter because of unbelief. They now enter into the Promised Land. You think it's all going great, and then there's this moment of God says, okay, everybody needs to get recircumcised, which militarily makes no sense. Because there's a story back in Genesis of an abusive situation that happens with one of Jacob's daughters, and Levi and Simeon go and they convince this whole city to have the men get circumcised, and then while they're all sore, they go kill them. Okay, so this is a medical process, and without anesthetic and all that stuff, it hurts. Why would you cross the Jordan River, enter into enemy territory, and then do that? So there's some different things of why, were they not practicing this when they should have been? There's some discussion there. Militarily, it makes no sense, but it put them in a position of faith. When they were at their weakest point, they had to trust God to deliver them, because now there's no river between them and Jericho. An attack on them would be easy, and the text in Joshua says that Jericho's trembling in their boots, afraid of them because of what they're going to do. So, at this point, in some sense, this is a new generation stepping out of the unbelief of their parents. They're stepping out by faith, and the results of that is the beginning of the conquest with the miraculous walls of Jericho falling down. This was a spiritual high point. This was the last major point in the story where we see this angel of the Lord figure. And Bochim, one of the reasons I think it is connected to Bethel here is because in chapter 1, Bethel's mentioned a few times as a location where they are. It's a movement of they were once on a spiritual high in obedience to God. When they had an issue to be dealt with, they dealt with it and they followed God's command. To now, they've moved to another position where God's given them commands and directives. He's told them what to do and they've failed. They've partially obeyed. They've committed incomplete obedience. And the angel of the Lord now has a message for the people because of their incomplete obedience. The verse goes on. It says, and the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you unto the land which I swear unto your fathers, and said, I will never break my covenant with you. So the angel of the Lord, who I believe is Christ, he starts with the past favors that God has shown to his people. He's the one who's delivered them out of Egypt. He's the one who's brought them to the Promised Land. And at this point in the story, not just to the edge of the Promised Land, but they have been given victory of much of or most of the Promised Land. There's still areas that need conquered, but he was the one enabling them to have victory. And also here, he reminds them that this was a covenant that he or the Lord would not break with them. Question, was this covenant broken? In some ways, the covenant's already broken, not because of God, but because of the people. They failed to obey, they failed to do what God said, and as a result, they were breaking the covenant, much like way back in Exodus, the people broke the covenant with the golden calf at Mount Sinai. Then goes on in verse 2, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars. So here's some past commands that the angel has given to, or that God has given to his people. No alliances with the enemy. Did we read of any alliances back in chapter 1? Whether it was, we're going to make this agreement with this one guy who will show us a way into a city. We're going to team up with him, or, we're going to live with these people. It's okay. We can't drive them out. So we're just going to kind of settle here with them and try to get along with their ways. They were making alliances. It says, no, they were not to leave any of their altars remaining. This becomes not just in the judges, but this becomes on into the kings. These high places and these altars were an ongoing thorn in the flesh of Israel, thorn in their side because of the constant, easy perpetuation of the people to look to anything other than God for their protection, for their crops, for their rain, for what they needed. When they needed something, if God wasn't answering the way they want, they would turn to other false gods. And thus, the command back from Exodus 34, "But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves," they ignored. They had broken the commands of God. The verse goes on with the last question here. "But ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this?" And in a sense, there's two things he says, you didn't obey, and then it's a question of, look at what you've done, is how some translations have put this. The effect of them not obeying God completely had left them vulnerable and open to their enemies. And if you remember the tribe of Dan, they couldn't live in the valley because they couldn't drive out the inhabitants of the valley, so they themselves were contained to the hills. This is what happens when we fail to follow God and His Word to the letter, to the T. And I don't mean to promote like some sort of legalism here, but when we make excuses for reasons why we can't do what God said, we will always find ourselves in trouble. The angel goes on in verse 3 with a past warning that will come true. He says, Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your side, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. Looking back, we've already seen Exodus 23 with this command, in Exodus 34 as well. This isn't an announcement of necessarily their future judgment, but it's a reminder of the past declarations of the consequences Israel would experience if they didn't follow and obey God. And this is what exactly happens. They become thorns to the people. And it says, their God shall be a snare to you. In the ancient world's thinking, when you conquered a land, every land had a geographical deity or god that ruled it to some degree. Okay? So when you conquered a new land or new people, you needed to make friends with that new deity. Okay? Now, this is not part of the biblical thinking is no. God is the God over all the earth. There is no other God over Him. Okay? But it was common in their thinking of, those Canaanites, they were really good with crops. And they had rain and they did well. And, we're not prospering so well. Maybe I should see what would happen if I set up a little altar to Baal. He's the God of rain and thunder, and maybe he can help me here. And maybe if I follow that. And that was kind of the thinking that would lead the people back time and time again to worship of Baal and Ashtaroth. And this was the exact thinking, this was the reasoning behind why God said you have to drive them out, you have to tear down their altars, you don't want anything to do with their gods, but instead their gods become a snare to them. In the Bible Knowledge Commentary, they note, as a result of Israel's disobedience, the divine aid by which Israel would have driven out the Canaanites was withheld. They had broken their side of the covenant, and in doing so, God had Himself removed His aid, not completely, but His full aid from His people to drive them out of the land. Because of their unbelief, it stopped what God would do. Now, we're not saying God's limited. God is not limited in any way. But when you and I are unwilling to trust Him, that's where He stops. He stops because He's not going to run roughshod over your will and mine. And we have a free will. And when we choose wrong, and when we choose, maybe we're not choosing Baal and Ashtaroth, but we're choosing the gods of money or power or fame or just comfort. We're choosing the things that we find so important, and we prioritize those in our life, and we let the things of the Lord slip to the side. It withholds God's blessing from us. And the blessings we receive from the Lord at that point are simply out of His mercy. Not that He doesn't love us, but this is what's happening with Israel. Their divine protection is being withheld. Divine victory is being withheld because they failed in unbelief. The angel of the Lord goes into then the present response to this message. How will the nation respond? In verses 4-5, and it came to pass when the angel of the Lord spake these words unto all the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voices and wept. And they called the name of that place Bolkim, and they sacrificed there unto the Lord. The response they have is they weep with their voices, and this is actually a good response on the surface. This is a good response. This looks like a repentance. This looks like they're weeping and they're calling out on God. They name the place Bolkim, which means the place of weeping. And they go on and they offer sacrifices to the Lord here. But I can't help but wonder if this is more the effect of a person getting their hand caught in the cookie jar. And the reason I say that is because time and time and time again throughout the book of the Judges, they will repent and they will weep. But then they fall back into the same sin. And maybe this is to be fair, some of this is generational where, this is the generation that repents and then another generation falls into sin. I understand that. But there comes a point when it's almost ironic of how many times they weep over failure because it hurts. And they're crying out to God because it hurts. This isn't what they wanted. This isn't what they expected. This isn't what they envisioned. They want something better, but they themselves were the ones to cut God short in their unbelief. As one commentary notes, the weeping of the Israelites left little more than the place name Bolkim. For it apparently did not express true repentance, since the people did not turn permanently from their disobedience. The sacrifices offered to the Lord at Bolkim seem to have been only an external ritual, rather than an expression of true faith. So here we have the angel of the Lord. He's confronted God's people. He's given them the reminder of God's promises and provisions. God delivered you from Egypt. Now that was a previous generation, so that would have been their parents and whatnot. They were delivered from Egypt. They were brought to the promised land. They were given the promised land. This was God at work. And when you see walls sink into the ground, and when you see hailstorms, hail and fire come down on your enemies as you're fighting, when you see God do that type of work on your behalf, when you, the underdog, win the day and conquer the great fortresses of that period in time in the land of Canaan, you've seen God at work. And are you going to trust that God is the God who keeps His word, or are you going to look to your human provisions and promises? And in chapter 1, we read time and time again how they accepted incomplete victory. How they conceded to work with the enemy. How they collected tribute and taxed the enemy. And in some cases, they were even controlled by the enemy. Who will you trust and depend? And the problem they'd got themselves into is they depended on their own strength, their own wits, their own ability, and that led them away from trusting the Lord. And in your life and mine, we end up with the exact same problem. Will we trust God, or will we trust our own ability? Will we trust our own information? I'm no expert on science. I'm no expert on this coronavirus. I think most of us have probably consumed way more media in the last month or two than maybe we normally do. And it gets to a point where I've never been in the military, but they talk about groups when you're on high alert for so long. High alert means nothing. It just you're desensitized to it. And sometimes there's so much talk in the news on what the virus is doing and what the numbers are and how we should respond or how we shouldn't respond. And folks, I want our scientists to be able to figure out things, and I want our politicians to be able to look at the right information and make the right decisions. But I know that there's people with agendas. But the issue comes down to, who are you going to trust and listen to? Who's got the best say? Who's got the best advice? And you know, as much as we all think we are right, we're not always right. But we do serve a God who's on the throne. And in the middle of the pandemic or epidemic or whatever you want to call it, in the middle of everything going on, we can still trust Him. We can still rest in Him. This is a situation, I was reading one article about churches who are at massive conflict right now because half of the congregation is wearing masks and upset at the other half for not wearing masks. And there's this conflict. And I this is our first Sunday back. I hope I don't envision us having anything like that. But do you see how this can cause divisions and strife? And the reality is, if we're going to trust the Lord, if you're trusting Him and you feel the best thing to do is wear a mask, that's fine. If you feel you're fine not wearing a mask and you're not breaking any laws or rules by doing so, you trust the Lord. All right? Don't go sneeze on everybody, please. But we can get so caught up in looking at the human details that we forget that the devil is a liar and the master of it. And by giving you incomplete or wrong information, and then us acting with our eyes and our focus on what we think we can achieve humanly, we miss the divine perspective. Now, I've applied it to the virus in some ways and how we respond. But this is a question we face on a moment-by-moment, day-by-day basis. When a problem occurs, an obstacle in our life, when something there is in the way, will we respond in faith and trust the Lord in what He said? Or will we respond in fear and try to work things out on our own understanding? Here, God's enablement and protection was pulled back from His people. Not forever, not completely, but it was pulled back because they chose to trust other things and people. Has God's blessings been pulled back on your life because you've chose to trust your own understanding? You've chose ways of working things out on the human side that have neglected the Lord. When you and I are confronted with problems, will we respond in fear or faith? Let's close in a word of prayer. Lord, we thank You for Your word here this morning. And as the angel of the Lord has given a message to His people, a message that is not exactly glamorous, but one that it was necessary. Lord, I ask that it would serve as a good reminder for us to be a people of Your word, so that we know what You say, we know who You are, we know what Your character is like, and we're allowing Your word to conform us into the image of Christ. But also, would we not just be a people of the word, but would we be a people who live it out in what we say, in where we go, in how we act, in our love and compassion and care for others. Lord, I ask, we would not respond as Israel has here with failure because of fear, but rather would we respond in faith, trusting You for provision and protection and enablement for victory. With heads bowed and eyes closed, as Mrs. Driscoll just begins to play a hymn of invitation. I don't know what exactly the Lord has spoken to you about, but is there an area in your life that needs turned over to the Lord? Maybe you've been responding in fear and trying to work out your own solution when it's time to accept what God has said and cast your cares on Him, for He careth for you. Lord, this week, help us to trust You in and through all situations. And as we are in a time when several aspects of our lives are turned upside down, when we're looking at the economy and we're looking at the health and welfare of our nation, and we're looking at our neighbors, Lord, at this time, help us to first and foremost keep our eyes fixed on You, resting and trusting in You through every circumstance. And may we live that out through daily choices and action that reflect Your love and compassion for those around us. We ask this in Your Son's name. Amen.